So if you missed any of the class, as we always stress, go and watch it. And if you have questions, come and ask us. You can ask us directly or on the page. I was happy that two students contacted me this week, and I had a great session with them. I will not mention their names, but then they understood the whole thing. I even gave them some one or two assignments. They got back to me, and they were really happy. They were saying they were lost somewhere, but from what I gave them, they are good to go. And that's what we want to see. We just don't want to like have a session and then you go. Whether you know or not, it's like it's none of our business. No, it's our business. So please do well to always reach out to us when we um, how do you call it, have a session with you. So I'm starting my class. Arthur. Okay. So today's topic is arrays. So what's an array? Array is also a type of variable, just like we started from the previous session. But this type of variable contains a list of data or a list of elements or values of the same type. So in other words, it's also a variable, but just this time around, it's a collection of variables. So an array is used. So why an array? An array is used to store multiple values in a single variable. So I'm going to just give you an example. So for example, like we said, if you want to declare a variable, you just specify the type, the name, and then the value. So this is a type, this is a name and a value. So you have a list of names that you want to store in a single in a list of names you want to store. So assuming you have about 5 names you want to store, this one is just 2. Giving them name 1, name 2, name 3, name 4 is going to be a bit tedious. So the best way to actually store all these, since they are all of the same type string, is to put them in a single variable, which is an array. So this is another best approach to do this. I hope you can see my cursor. To do this, so the best approach is just specify string. You bring your square box here, and then you just say names. You bring your curly braces, and then you bring your 2 names inside. Now it can be more based on the list of names you want to store. Now, how is an array declared? Yes, just like the previous one you saw, array declaration varies in most programming languages, but have the same usage and similarities. So in Rails, you might not see this, or in Python, you might not see how an array being declared as this type, or in JavaScript, you might not see this, but it's all the same. All these programming languages I'm mentioning have their own syntax of declaring an array. However, their usage and functionality is the same. They all store a list of elements, data, or variable of the same type. So for instance, let's look at this second one, the one that's my this thing is on. This is a list of integer, and it's storing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 elements. So the parts of an array, I'm just going to say it again from the previous one. So this represents the array type or the type of array. This represents the array's name. And then what is in the curly braces, most of the times too, in some programming language, it's a square braces, is the list of initialized values. Now, this one too is another way or another form of declaring an empty array. So this one doesn't have elements, but you are specifying the size or the size of data it should take. It should just take a size of 10 or a length of 10. So as we go ahead, you understand how arrays are declared better. So assigning an how do you assign values to an array? It's simple. You just declare the type here, and then the name, and then you pass in the values. The same way, if you are doing it for integers, you just do it this way, and then you pass the values into it. Now, this is
Andy,
where, yeah.
it seems someone raised his hand. Nanayao. I don't know what they want.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Nanayao. Yeah.
Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
I'm listening. Yeah.
As you were saying, he said an array can store data of just a particular data type. Can't I
Yes.
maybe have an integer and I have a string?
Yes.
Can I mix them up in one array?
With strongly typed programming languages such as Java, you can't do that. But I believe some arrays, for some programming languages like Ruby, can accommodate such array mixed type. Yes. But then both of programming languages use one particular I hope I answered your question.
Okay, that means it's language dependent.
Yes, that's why I said from that array declaration varies from programming language, but have same usage and functionality.
Okay, all right. Thank
Usage
you.
and yes. Now, can someone mute his side? I think Nanaya mute his side. Thank you. Yes. So, thank you for the question. We'll move it ahead, and I think there's a site I will introduce all of you to. Then we'll do some small practice there to see what I'm saying. I just don't want to be always showing the slide here. So every array can be accessed through its index. So every array, I mean, in most programming languages, array indexing starts from 0, and each index holds a single element or data. So picture an array as a box, a square boxes packed together, and then the first box in which you put your element is labeled 0. The second box that you put your item into it is labeled 1 to infinity, till where you specified your size. So in C programming language, there's a picture of an array that has been declared. I'm just giving you visuals to at least picture how arrays are stored. So if you put an element here and you want to access the element in it, you have to call the array variable, and then put a square braces and then put in 0 here. And the computer will just come and look for the array variable and just straightforward point to the box labeled 0. Now, if I change the element here to 3, the computer will pick the array variable called ARR and then move straight to the box labeled 3 and pick the elements there and display, or use it for whatever purpose you are going to use. On this note, I want to know if everyone is clear on this, because indexing is what we are going to build on. Array indexing is very vital and very important. If you don't understand it, moving to the next chapter will be a bit dicey. So just have it in mind that array indexing is just labeling of the list of elements. So each element that you put inside, the computer doesn't know what is inside. It only knows it by the label that you've placed on the boxes. And by default, most programming languages starts their index with 0 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, so far all the programming languages have used. Does anyone have a question? Okay.
Nanaya still has his hands up. I don't know if he's done.
Okay. So Nanaya,
I'm
please, when
coming in
you
again.
ask your question, you can mute
If
yourself and answer because your background was a
Oh,
bit noisy. Thank you.
I'm out of that space now. I wanted to
Okay.
find out that's as you mentioned indexing. Does it have a limit that it can take?
No.
come again,
Array-
I didn't hear what you said.
He was asking whether array indexing has a limit.
A limit. Oh, okay.
Array
Okay.
indexing doesn't have a limit. But then when you are declaring an array and you specify the array size, so there's a way you declare an array and you specify the size. So the moment you declare the array and you don't put any value in it and you specify the size that it should just take 6 elements. That one you've limited the array. It's like you've arranged the boxes already and you've not given it any extra space. So anytime you try adding any extra element as higher than the how do you call it, the index number you've given, there will be an error thrown. Also, if you are looping into an array and you exceed the index or the elements inside the array, for instance, you have an array that has index starting from 0 to 5, and then maybe you are doing a looping. Yeah, last week we learned about looping a little. So if I mention, it shouldn't be something strange. Looping is iteration or going through the array, and you mistakenly exceed the index and you exceed to maybe 6, it can also throw an error. So we have open array, like you just declare the array and start putting elements in it. That one has no limits. But the moment you declare an array and you specify the size of the array, then the array has a limit and you cannot exceed. It can cause issues in your code or your runtime. I don't know if I've answered your question now.
Yeah, it's answered.
Okay, thank you. So, like I was saying, this is another example. How can you access an element in an array? So to be able to access an element in an array, you just specify, call the variable. Oops, why am I skipping? So call the variable and then pass the index. Note that the index is the label of the elements, and the computer doesn't really know the content inside the array. It only knows the label. It knows it by labels, and it starts from 0. So the moment you declare this array, the computer considers this element as 0, and this one as 1, and this one as 2, and this one as 3. So the moment you try printing out, print out means display what is in the array, and you pass an index of 0 to it, it will bring you an output of Volvo. So this is a list of cars, and you want to display Ford. Can someone tell me the index number that you pass into the cars? Let's be a bit interactive. Hi, hello.
Can I get a question again?
Yes, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Can you repeat the question?
So I was saying, every value or every element in an array, the computer doesn't know it. It knows it by the index numbers. Just like you go to you are going to write your exams, the marker doesn't know your name. He only knows you by your index number. So when he's done, you just put your value there. So the computer also doesn't really care about the content in the array. All it does is when you give it an index number, it goes to the array values and then just pick the content in there. So I'm saying that what if I want to display, instead of Volvo, I want to display Ford. What index number do I pass here to display Ford?
Okay, that's 2.
Correct. That's 2. Because the element here is 0. The element here is labeled as 1. And this one is 2. So it will display Ford. Now, it might sound a bit distant. So I'm going to jump into, sorry, let me just, so there's this online editor. You don't need to install anything on your machine. You just type repo it. I will share this on the page right now, and I think I'll add it to my slide. So you guys can practice yourself. Sorry. Yep. So, and when you go there, you'll be made to sign up or log in. Me, I signed in with my Google account. I didn't have time to. You can sign in with your GitHub and all that. And they'll just ask you which programming language you want to create a file in and then start programming. So I've done some tests on these things. Sometimes you don't need to install the whole project on your machine to start testing. So so over here, I'm just going to do it in Java because we started with Java with you guys. So it's creating. So you just give it some time. I'll show you 2 places you can just go and test all these things we are doing. And when it does this, you just see a space here where they've given you a sample code and then they've written hello world. And then you have this green button here and it's written run. So definitely it's going to run something. So I'm just going to click it to see my display on this side of the screen. Now it has displayed hello world. In that case, I can just write anything here. So hello, Yao is the interactive person now. So let me say hello, Yao. And let me run. And it just comes here to display. So we want to practice what we are preaching. So we are going to just do this as Yao said, and we are going to try and display Ford and see if it works. So we are going to declare a string, put our box here, and then call it cars. And I'll call this Volvo. I think the other one, I don't remember, but I think Propel something. Toyota. And what again? What other car do you have? Lexus. Oh. I'm just giving it a name. Okay. So we want to system print out. Let me do the site to just have. So we want to print out the value of Toyota, or let me just put there Ford. It was Ford. I remember the value was Ford. So we want to display the value here Ford to where the hello Nanayao is. So we are just going to call the cars and then pass in the index, which is 0, 1, 2 into it. So when we pass 2 here and then we run, it's going to display Ford. So instead of having string car 1, then you say Volvo, then you come to the next line string car 2, then you just use it. We have simplified all of them by just putting all the values in one variable here and then displaying it. So indexing is very important. If you understand indexing, so for instance, if I want to display the last value, I'll just pass in 3 and then it is going to display Lexus. Now, what if I exceed the content in this. It's going to crash, but let's try. I just want us to or explore. So it's going to tell you the length of the array index. There's no value there. It's going to give you some programming language. You don't even understand the error that is going to say. By this one, it said index 4 out of bound of the length. So basically that's it. Let's go back to the tutorial. So that's it for how to access an array element here. Now, how can you change the element or the value? So you can see that from the past tutorial I just showed you guys, you are able to declare and pass initial value in it. So what if you want to change the contents in some part of the array? You still go with the index. Sorry. You still use the index, but this time around, you pass a value to it. So from the display you are seeing here, I realized that maybe the nana, I don't need it again. I just want ya in capitals. So I pass in the index, and you can see that every array starts with 0. So I pass in the index of 0, and then just change the value to ya. And then if I want to know the contents in it, this is the outputs. Oops. This is the outputs of the final array, which is ya in capital, then Akosia follows. And so the computer didn't even touch this and touch that because of the indexing. So indexing is very important in arrays. So this is a general question. I think it's so easy from the previous tutorial I've just showed you. And so it's for you. Just go and try it. If you have any issue, you can buzz me. I'm not going to talk about it. So he said, test yourself with this exercise. And from what I've explained, if you can't do this, that means you have to visit all the previous classes and then also contact me maybe personally to understand, because this is very easy. He said create an array of type string, and it's an array that is called class. And this I took this source from 3W Schools, and I'll share that link also with you so that you can go and practice. It gives you the opportunity to just click and do your practice there. So there's another important key thing you have to know in arrays. That's the array size or length. In some programming language, they call it size, and some to call it length, but it's all the same. The size tells the number of elements in the array. It's different. Some people always confuse it with the index. Now, you should know that index starts from 0. So when you count index, it's always less than 1 of the size. So when counting an array, it's 0, 1, 2. So if I ask you what is the index, the last index of an array is 0, is the 2, 0, 1, 2. But then when you say the size or the length of the array, it's asking you how many elements or data or values are in the array. So the computer is that smart that it has some extra methods or stored procedures that are given to us free of charge. Apart from the length, there are other things. They have the truncate, slides, and all that. But when we divert into our various back end, front end, and all that, we will dive deep into arrays as we do a lot of projects with what we are doing. But for now, one of the basic functions we have to learn is the length. The length just tells you the number of elements in the array. So if you look at this, the length here is 1, 2, 3. This is the number of elements in this array. And the result is going to give you 3. We'll test this soon. So let me go back here and just come here. I hope you can see my screen. Let me increase it a little so that you guys can see. Okay. Let me clear this side. So I want to get the length of the array. Who can tell me the results of this request and this display I'm about to do? Who can tell me? Can someone quickly tell me? Should I move? I click the red button. Okay, fine. Your silence means you are just there. I know you are there. So
William says he's ready to answer.
oh, okay, William, please. What will be the output?
I think it's 4.
Yes, it's 4, and that's what has displayed here, 4. So it's the computer is going to count the elements in the array or the data in the array or the values. We mix the words. It's either elements, it's either values, or it's either data. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's the value here, as you can see, 4. So if I add another element inside, maybe just give me some let me call it taxi, and then just run. It's going to increase 5. You see? Yeah. So that's it.
Hello, Andy.
Yes. Please mention your name. So Seiram, right?
No,
Yeah.
Stella. Stella,
Which
that's Stella.
language is this, please?
Stella. Okay. So what's your question, please?
I said, which language is this? I don't understand it. I thought we are doing JavaScript.
Okay. So I just chose Java. But then when you come here, you can choose any programming language and just display. And like I said, arrays declaration might vary a little in every programming language. But then the functionality and the usage are the same. So don't be a bit confused. Okay, so why are we declaring it this way? And just get the concepts of how arrays are used, why they are used, and how they are declared. But when we divert into the various programming languages and courses, you'll be able to understand. So don't be worried at all. This is just a general overview of what arrays are and how they are used. So every array has a length. Every array has elements. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. So I'm good. I'm continuing. Okay. So there are types of arrays, and we are going to use the first two a lot. The multi-dimensional array, well, it's there, but it depends on the logic and the kind of complex software or program you are developing. You might venture into that. So I'll just talk about it, but I'll highlight more on the one-dimensional array and the two-dimensional array, because the multi is a bit complex and might confuse you more, but then I'll talk about it a little. So let's start with the one-dimensional array. What's a one-dimensional array? This type is linear, or it's just one line. And to access its elements, we just use a single index. And basically, when I started teaching the array, that's what I've been showing you so far. It's the basic form of an array. And accessing it is easy, declaring it simple. You just need a single index to access its elements, and that's all. You are done. So basically, it's simple. It shouldn't be that complex. Someone mentioned and then there's one vital thing that you have to take notes, especially when it comes to looping. And we've discussed looping in our previous class. Looping is iterating through an array, and it varies per programming language. Below is an example. So array looping varies a lot in some programming languages. The reason I'm saying that in Rails, for instance, you just do the array.each, then you just loop into it. Some other programming language to let you do a whole lot of things. By the end of the day, yeah, array allows you to loop or iterate into the element and then do your actions on the elements. So this is a simple, basic way of looping into an array. And in our previous class, we did a for loop where our tutor Amos taught us how to do a for loop, but I'm just going to highlight it. So we all remember from our just ended slide, you can access an array element via the index. So we want to iterate through the array by passing the index of each of the the elements, the length, and then we display it. This is just a simple concept. I don't know if you understand, but what I'm trying to do here is I want to display every element in the array, but I don't want to do it one by one like I did it here. So let me go back to the display here. I think this is better. So as you can see, I did a display here and I was doing 0. So imagine I want to display all the contents. That means I'll be doing 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And then when you run, it's going to display all the contents like this. Now, what if there's an easier way of just using one line of code like this? And then you iterate through and then display. So basically, that's the concept of looping. So with a for loop, you just declare your iterator or your iterator and then set it to a value which is 0, because we all know array starts from index starts from 0. Then we put in our condition. Our condition is if the index number is still less than how do you call it? Less than the cars.length, it should increase the iterator and then run. I hope you understand. This is where when you have a question, you can ask me and I'll quickly. Then over here, instead of putting the 0, I'll just put the index number here. I hope you get it. Your feedback, it will be like important right now, because if I run, so if I run right now, you see when I did, I left. So let me see. Let me just add what's the long range. Yeah. So this loop will occur, and this time around is going to display everything here. And this is a way of iterating through a linear type of an array. I hope I'm clear here. I can move ahead. Hello?
Hi.
Okay. I hope everyone understands, or there's a question. Okay, I'm moving ahead. Okay, I've been told to increase the fonts. Okay, so with a two-dimensional array, it's also an array of one-dimensional arrays. In other words, it's an array of arrays. But then this time around, it can be accessed, or it is mostly accessed with 2 indexes. So this is a typical example of a two-dimensional array. And I will just give you an example again in the. So for a two-dimensional array, we can have a string of what do you call, maybe users and their age. So users, and this time around 2 boxes, because two-dimensional array is accessed by 2 boxes. Then so the first one is going to be maybe Ayu, and his position is 10. And we have who again? Pate, and his position, I don't know if it's 7 or something. Yeah. So this is as an example of a two-dimensional array now. To access its elements, let me always to access the elements of this one here, you have to pass in 2 indexes, and I'll explain how the indexes work here. 0, let me see which ones. Yes, this is exactly what I wanted. So it's becoming a bit complex, but let's try and understand here for me. So this array is a two-dimensional array. How and why? First of all, this first bracket, represents the let me increase it a little. You see that when I so this first bracket represents the first index of the array, the first index here. Now I don't even need to just do this. This is the easiest. Yes, okay. So this one represents the first index of an array. This is the first linear. So when the computer comes in, you are saying that it should take the first bracket and then go to the first element of that bracket and then do whatever it likes there. So when the computer comes, if you look at the first bracket here, please follow. When it comes to the first bracket here, and as you can see 2 elements here. This whole bracket represents 1 element. This also represents 1 element in this box. So when it comes here, it will just come here and pick the first element. Now, when it comes here, this one too is another array. So I can add maybe Kofi into it. And when it comes here, this is another array, and it's telling me that I should access that array's 0 index. So if I change this to 1, it will not pick Ayu, but then come and pick Kofi. Let me run it and show you. So you see, it came here to pick Kofi. It's a bit dicey, but then this is a simplest way of displaying a two-dimensional array, which can be is accessed with just two indexes. At this point, if you have any question, you can let me know, and then I just explain further. Else, I'll go to the next screen. So let me display again. So this is another example of a two-dimensional array, and accessing it is so. Another vital part of a two-dimensional array is its iteration. Iteration is very, very key, and if you don't do it well, you might mess up your whole code structure, and everything might not. So I'll deliberately go through with you one by one before.
Hello, Andy.
Yes. Hello.
Hello, Andy.
Yes.
Sorry to
hello.
interrupt. Can you increase your font a little bit?
Okay. Is it this one? This one or the code section?
Yeah, the code section.
The code section. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
When I get there, I'll increase it.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So this is an example of iterating through a two-dimensional array. Let me explain here, then we'll go into the code and then just do it. Now, remember we started with the iteration through a linear dimensional array or a one-dimensional array. So first of all, you loop through it. You start with the first line of or first level of the array. Then you dive deep into the second level of the array. I hope I'm making sense. So first of all, you dive through the first level. So this one, for instance, is doing what we previously learned. You declare your integer, set it to 0, do your if statement, or you do your condition here. If the integer is less than the length, you increment it by 1, and then do your iteration. Now, when you get into the second level, this time around, you've picked this element. So this is 0, 1. But then when you come to 0, 0 also is an array. So you have to iterate through this array. And that's exactly what it's doing here. So when you're iterating through this array, the value 0 still remains because you're on the 0 elements. So here will still contain the index value here, and then you increment the value of the index you set up here. So it's going to be a bit tricky, but let's go into the code and let me explain one by one for us to understand. So you have an integer called numbers. This is a two-dimensional array. So I'm setting the first element and the second element. So you can see that this is like just saying 1 and 0. So this is a linear or one-dimensional array. But now we said that the two-dimensional array is an array of arrays. So instead of just putting one element there, we want to put multiple elements here, and also another element here. So now this become a two-dimensional array. Now to access this element is going to be 0, index 0. Then here, if you want to access 2, then you are going to index 0, 1. Assuming this one also has another element and you want to access this element, which is 4, is going to be index 0. This is 0, 1, 2. So index 0, 2. You understand? So I don't know if someone can help me access the element 5 here for me before I start with the iteration. If I want to access the element 5, how will I call it to display? Let me increase the size. Sorry. I hope you can see my screen now. I've done it bigger, as big as possible. Okay, your silence means you are watching. Okay, so I want to access the element 5 here. Now, in two-dimensional array, like I said, you need 2 index numbers to be able to access any element in the code. So I want to access the value 5. So I will move. If I come here, it's going to be 0, 1. And when I come to the 1, the element 5 is. So I have to go into this array. And this array too has its own indexing, which is 0, 1, 2. So I will come to 1 here. This is 0, 1. So I'm on this line. And then I want to access the value 5. So I'll do 0, 1, 2. So this is 2. And then when I run right now, I'm expected to see 5 over here. Now this is 5. So assuming I add numbers, I just want to. Please interact with me, I beg you. So I'm going to add another element. 15, 12, 10, 11. Please, can someone help me access the element 11? Hello? Hello? Okay, fine. Your silence means you are watching. So 0, 1, 2. Now, when I come to 0, 1, 2, I want to access the element 11. So 0, 1, 2. I'll put 2 here. And I want to access the element 11. So it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3. So 3 here. Let's see what happens. So this is 11. Now, the easiest way to explain how multi-dimensional, two-dimensional array is also a multi-dimensional array, but it's just the basic. So this is basically how a multi-dimensional array works. However, this is just a two-dimensional array, like the simplest form. Now I want to iterate through. I don't want to be typing like doing counts 1, 2, 3. I want to iterate through and display all the elements inside this, and also tell you guys each of the elements what they contain. So I'm going to code whilst explaining to you. I hope you understand. So for int I equals 0, like I said, this time I'm starting with the top loop. If I is less than the numbers length, it should increment it by 1. By 1. You can, most of the times, I usually like this. I don't know why, but let's just go with this. Let's try with this flow first. So I close my brackets, and this, when I do this and I do print out, elements, yes. Now this is going to display the number of elements on the top layer. It's going to tell me number of elements 1, 2, 3, 4, I guess. Yes, so like we are displaying here in rows. We have 1, 0, we have 0, 1, 2, and that's what that's displayed here. But we want the content in each of the elements. Now, how do we access the content in each of the elements? We have to do another for loop for each, because they are also arrays. So for int e, we can name it any this thing. For each element in the array, we set it to 0, and we do if e is less than the content of the element here. So take note, these elements here are also arrays. Now that we are into each of the elements, we have to now consider the length of these elements. I don't know if you are getting me, but that's the only way I can explain now. So the numbers into brackets, if I come here, if I do element 0, this is, I'm going to get access to the whole array here. So I'll put the I in here, and then I'll just get the length. I think I have to pause on this loop and display the length first. If I'm going too fast or I'm confusing you, please let me know, I beg. And pass in here. So over here now we have access to each of the elements, and now we can display the how do you call it, the content in it. But before we do that, I'll comment the for loop I've just done out. And so this time around, we want to display the element just like we were doing initially. So over here will be the first line element, which is I. We put it here. And then when we get access to each of the elements, we put in the value E here. So now when we get to each of the elements, you see now it was just displaying, okay, we have 3 elements. But now when it gets to each of the elements, we expect that it displays each of the elements under each of them. So let's just run it and see. Okay, so as you can see, we have element 0, which is 0, 1, 0, 2, 4, and that is what is here. And element 1, which is 4, 1, 5, and that is what is here. And element 2, which is 15, 12, 10. So even if I increase it to, I increase this element, I add more, it's still going to iterate through and do the needful, display all elements in each. And this is a way of iterating through a 2-dimensional array. With a 2-dimensional array, always you need 2 indexes to move through it. So first of all, the first loop is doing the first iteration to get access to each of the elements. And as it gets access to each of the elements, it's also the second iteration iterates through each of this array. I know it's quite confusing, but when you revisit it and you test it on this platform, Repl, you test, you understand the basics of looping. And we did looping previously, so I'm sure you guys. So with multi-dimensional arrays, it's an array of arrays, and it's very dynamic. It's very dynamic in the sense that it has a lot of indexing. It's not just the two indexing. It can have up to n, the n index. And the above statements, as you can see, is a way that a multi-dimensional array is declared. And like I said, we are not going to highlight too much on it because you rarely use it unless maybe you are doing maybe a highly complex logic that you might need a dynamic array to work with. So usually this is a typical example of how do you call it, a multi-dimensional array. And I did an example here. This an example of a multi-dimensional array. It's a bit similar to the previous one we just did, but as you can see, the index, this is a basic example, and you can see the indexing here is more than 2, it's 3. And it can increase, this is just small, it can increase more and more and more. So these are good links I've shared on the slide. My source, especially this, was really helpful. I want to share some few knowledge. I learned most of my programming on this platform, and I like to share with you. It's W3 Schools, and it teaches you all the basics that you need in programming. You have HTML, CSS, Python, and all. But I'm just letting you know that we can go to the Java section and just go to, okay, we have the variables, almost all the topics that we've discussed here, Boolean, if, else, switch, and all. And they've made it simple. You don't need to read too much. Read little, you do your practice. Read little, you do your practice. So all my slide sources, most of them was from this side. And thanks to all the people who did this, wherever they are. So when you read and you understand, you just click here. It takes you to a new screen and you do your practice. So when you click on the button run here, it will load over here for a while and you just do your practice. So you can play around, you face issues, and you can also do this on your phone if you don't have a PC. You're not limited. So please do more practice. Like I said, this class is going to be more practical. I was expecting you guys to give me more questions and practical, but at least it's so far so good. So on this note, it's question time. Consistency is the key to success, and be consistent in learning and practicing, like I just shared with you. If you have any question, I'm just going to put some few minutes to ask, else we close the meeting, and then if there's any announcements, we'll share that. We'll do that. Hello. Or I should mention names. I'm not good at that, so please. Hello. Okay. So thank you. Don't worry if it doesn't work right. If everything did. you would be out of a job. And that's Moshe's law of software engineering. Don't be too worried if you don't understand. Like we said, consistency, questioning, and curiosity will let you know what to do. We all started this way and we were confused one way or the other. And we still get confused. We face complex issues, even though we have the programming background. So don't give up and just stay positive and just keep coding, keep practicing. Where you have questions, keep asking, and you'll be rewarded at the end of the day. You'll be glad you learned and you went through this session. So thank you very much. I'm done.
All right, Andy, thank you very much. That was a wonderful session. Some of it were quite complex, but then you're able to explain to your knowledge. So thanks a lot. Yeah, so I think that's it, right?
Yes, if tutors too, you have any addition or subtraction?
I mean, it's okay. I mean, there's the basics, so some of these things wouldn't be too clear. It wouldn't be too clear until we split into the different classes, and then the teachers would have time to go into detail. So I think it's good. It's good for now. Yeah. So that's what I would have to say.
Okay. It's among around maybe end the meeting. Today we've ended a bit earlier than usual. Amankwa, do you have anything to say? Is James, Amos, any of the tutors around? Okay. So thank you guys for joining the class. We are looking forward to hear from you and to also see you in our next class. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.